Good evening. I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday afternoon. I want to thank you for tuning in to our little devotional thought this evening. Just as a matter of a little announcement goes, if you're interested in our car parade at the church, we have rescheduled that because of the weather for Tuesday at 2 o'clock. So if you're interested in that, you can contact me or contact Carla or Sharon and let us know that you're planning on being there for that. We will meet at the church building, go around to some of our members' house, honk the horns, wave, things like that. Let them know that we've got them on our minds. So if you're interested, just reach out to us and let us know about that. And again, I want to thank you for tuning in. Continue to encourage you to share these messages with your friends. Make the most of the situation that we're living in. Now, a week or so ago, it was around the day that Abraham Lincoln, the commemorative day of that Abraham Lincoln passed away. I saw an article on the internet. It was about two fatal drinks that changed the world. You see, on the day that Abraham Lincoln lost his life, John Wilkes Booth stopped by a saloon to have himself some alcohol to build up his nerve in order to carry out the wicked plan that he had for the president. That same evening, Lincoln's bodyguard left his side and went to that same saloon to have a drink. While he was away, Booth slipped into the theater and killed the president. A little bit later on, Lincoln's bodyguard, Mr. Parker, was assigned the duty of guarding Lincoln's wife, and she was none too happy about that. She called him a man who had helped to kill the president because in her mind, he was an accomplice. Whether she really thought he was an accomplice or an unwitting accomplice, it doesn't really matter because the president was dead. So those were two costly drinks. An interesting thing about that is that also on that same day, Lincoln had made some comments in regard to alcohol. He said that we have cleared up a colossal job. Slavery is abolished. After Reconstruction, the next great question will be the overthrow and suppression of the legalized liquor traffic. So you see, Mr. Lincoln saw that as a problem. Now, I don't have any doubt that alcohol is an evil thing. It leaves destruction in its path wherever it goes. It breaks up families. People waste money on it that they do not have. Causes people to lose their jobs, to commit crimes that they wouldn't have committed, take actions that they should not, and all those things. And the Proverbs writer says in Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 1, wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led astray by it is not wise. Now all these things are true, there's no doubt, but that's not necessarily the full focus of what I want to talk to you about this evening. You see, as Christians, we need to be sure that we are sober thinkers and that we're not letting anything cloud our judgment or cause us to take actions that we shouldn't take. There's quite a few verses in the New Testament that says something in regard to sober thinking. And I'm just going to give you a few of those verses. Paul, writing in Romans chapter 12 and verse 3 says, for I say through the grace given to me to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. Paul again writing in 1 Thessalonians 5:6 says, therefore let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. In 1 Thessalonians 5:8 he wrote, but let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of love, of faith and love, and as a helmet the hope of salvation. Peter wrote in 1 Peter 1:13, therefore gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and rest your hope fully upon the grace that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Peter again writing in 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So you see, the Bible tells us that we're supposed to be clear thinkers. We're supposed to be on the watch. We're supposed to be looking out to try to do and make sure that we're staying on the right path and that we're doing what is right. In 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 5, in a section of that verse, Paul says, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Now, as a Christian, if we made it our goal to bring all of our actions down to every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ, how much better would we be? How much better would this world be? As Christians, we should do our best to make sure that we don't let anything cloud our judgment. Now, that could be alcohol, it could be drugs or something like that that would cause you to act in a way that you ought not to act, but it might also be something like anger, prejudices, preconceived notions, things that you think, but they don't necessarily line up with what the Bible has to say. So as Christians, we should be sure that we don't let anything cloud our judgment. And it could very easily be one of those things that I have just mentioned. Just because you don't drink alcohol or you're not on drugs does not mean that your judgment could not be clouded. We should make sure that we're thinking carefully. We should make sure that we think before we act. We should make sure that we think before we speak. Just because the thought goes through our mind doesn't mean it has to come out of our mouth. Just because a thought goes through our mind, it doesn't mean that we have to take action on that thing. So as Christians, we should do our best to let God guide us in everything that we do. Dwell on His Word. Let that be the guide for everything that you do in this life. This week, as you go out, dwell on these things. Think before you take action. Be a sober thinker. Don't let anything cloud your judgment. Friends, I want to thank you once again for tuning in, and I pray that you have a blessed evening.